There is a garage somewhere, maybe you know exactly which one, where a car sits that has not moved in 4 years. The tire on the driver's side is flat. The hood carries a thin layer of dust that has settled into something almost geological. And hanging from the rearview mirror, barely visible through the windshield, is an air freshener shaped like a pine tree that stopped smelling like anything around the time the previous president was still in office. The person standing in front of it is not fixing it. They are not washing it. They are not even touching it. They are just looking at it. And if you ask them why they still have it, they would give you an answer that is technically true and completely wrong at the same time. They would say they are going to restore it someday. Here is what is actually happening in that garage. The first car a person ever owns is not, psychologically speaking, a car. It is the first object in their entire life that was completely, unambiguously theirs, not the family television. Not a bedroom in a house their parents paid for. Theirs, their choice, their payment, their keys, their rules about who could eat in it and what music would play. For most people, the first car is the first time the world reflected their identity back at them in physical form. That is a remarkably powerful thing to happen to a person, regardless of whether the object doing it is a pristine 1967 Mustang Fastback or a two-tone 1992 Honda Civic with a cracked dashboard and a passenger window that only goes down 3/4 of the way. Think about what that actually means. Before the car, everything that defined you was borrowed. The house, the furniture, the rules, the schedule, all of it belonged to someone else first. The car was different. The car was the first declaration. And declarations, even quiet ones made in a dealership parking lot or a stranger's driveway with $400 in cash, leave marks. Psychologists have a name for what happens when an object becomes deeply, personally yours over time. It is called the endowment effect. The basic idea is straightforward. Once something belongs to you, really belongs to you, with memory and identity attached, it becomes worth significantly more to you than it would to anyone else. The market price and your price stop being the same number. They often stop being in the same conversation. This is why the person in the garage can receive a perfectly reasonable offer on a car that has not started in 3 years, pause for a moment, and decline without being able to articulate exactly why. The number was fine. The number was never the issue. What the number failed to account for was everything the number cannot account for. And that gap between what you would accept and what anyone would actually pay is one of the most psychologically revealing numbers in a person's life. It tells you exactly how much of yourself ended up inside the object. Most people, if they are honest, already know their number is unreasonable. They know it the moment it forms in their head. They say it anyway. Here is where it gets genuinely interesting. The first car does not just carry memories. It carries a specific version of the person who owned it. Whoever you were the first time you drove alone at midnight, the first time the car was really yours in the dark on an empty road with nowhere particular to be, that person lived primarily, maybe exclusively, in that vehicle. The anxieties, the confidence, the very specific flavor of freedom that existed at 18 or 19 or 22, those are not abstract feelings. They are embedded in the object. Not metaphorically, psychologically. The object and the self-concept become linked in a way that makes letting go of one feel functionally identical to abandoning the other. This is not sentiment. This is identity architecture. And it is more durable than most people expect. Because here is the thing about identity objects. They do not age the way everything else does. The car gets older, more impractical, increasingly expensive to maintain. The version of you that lives inside it does not. It stays exactly the age it was when it was formed. Which means keeping the car is, on some level, a way of keeping that version of yourself accessible. Not in a delusional way, not in a way the person would even necessarily describe in these terms. But the mechanism is real. The car is the only place that version of you still exists in physical form. And physical form, it turns out, matters more than we usually admit. Consider the specific situations only this psychology produces. Someone gets an offer on their first car, a fair offer, maybe even a generous one, and they shake their head and say they will think about it. They never call back. Not because the money was wrong, because accepting the money would require deciding, formally and finally, that the car is just a car. And once you make that decision out loud, it cannot be unmade. The offer expires. That is fine. The alternative was worse. Or consider the person who sold their first car 15 years ago because it made practical sense at the time because the transmission was going and the insurance was climbing, and someone offered them enough to put a dent in. Something more reliable, and who still occasionally, quietly, when no one is watching, types the make and model into a used car listing site just to see what comes up. They scroll through the results with a specific expression that is hard to describe. They are not looking to buy one back. They understand, rationally, that buying a different example of the same car is not the same thing and never will be. They are just looking, the same way the person in the garage is just looking. Or the one who drives their current car through a neighborhood they have not visited in years and turns down a particular street without fully deciding to and feels something they do not have a precise word for when they pass the exact parking spot where their first car used to sit every night after work. The car is gone. The spot is just asphalt. It has been just asphalt for a decade. And yet there is something there, in the act of passing it, that is not nothing. That is the endowment effect operating on a ghost. The generational dimension of this is worth spending a moment on, because the specific car changes everything in the story and nothing in the psychology. The person whose first car was a 1985 Honda Civic hatchback had a car that was, in its time, the rational choice of someone building independence carefully and from scratch. Practical, reliable, honest. The one whose first car was a 1995 Dodge Neon was driving something that communicated optimism in primary colors, something that said young deliberately, almost defiantly. The one whose first car was a 2003 Ford Focus was, statistically speaking, driving the single most invisible car on American roads at the time, and they will describe it to you with more warmth and specificity than most people bring to describing their wedding day. The one whose first car was a 1998 Jeep Cherokee already had the look of someone who had made a lifestyle decision before they were old enough to have a lifestyle. The cars are completely different objects. What they represented in their respective eras, total, unqualified, first-time personal freedom, is identical across all of them. The psychology does not care about the badge. It cares about the moment the keys were yours. Now, here is the reframe. Because this entire conversation has been moving toward one specific idea, and it is not the one you might expect. Every person who has ever sold their first car and regretted it immediately, and there are significantly more of them than anyone admits out loud, already knows what the person in the garage figured out intuitively before anyone had to explain it to them. The market has no mechanism for pricing what an object meant to who you were when you first had it. The transaction is clean, the loss is not. The check clears in 48 hours. The specific, irreplaceable weight of the thing, the version of yourself stored inside it, does not transfer to anything. It simply ceases to have a location. The person keeping the car is not being irrational. They are being precise about something that the market is structurally incapable of measuring. Sometimes the correct response to a fair offer is no. Not because you are confused about what the car is worth in dollars, because you are not confused at all about what the car is worth. The people who get called sentimental for keeping a car that hasn't run since the last administration are, in a very specific and defensible sense, the only ones in the transaction who have done the math correctly. Everyone else is just working with incomplete data. The dust will keep settling, the tire will stay flat, the pine tree air freshener will hang there, having outlasted its only actual function by about a decade, which is, if you think about it, a more honest metaphor for this entire situation than most people are comfortable sitting with. And the person in the garage will close the door, walk back inside, and tell themselves they are going to restore it someday. Maybe they will. Probably they will not. And somehow, and this is the part that is quietly worth acknowledging that does not make them wrong, drop the name and year of your first car in the comments and tell us whether you still have it. That single question is going to generate the best comment thread this channel has ever seen, and you already know it. And if this kind of psychology-first automotive content is what you want more of, the subscribe button is right there, and it will cost you considerably less than keeping a car you will never drive again.